My fellow Americans, tonight I am speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border.
In all honesty, a border wall or steel slats won't work. But great bodies of water will separate us from the horrible Mexican rapists. Introducing the 2019 Trump Great Border Moat. Stocked with the most aggressive penis fish, incredible man-eating alligators, and unbelievable genetically modified moose-cocked rape dolphins, as well as flying migrant-eating sharkfish. So incredible.
I swore to protect our country, and that is what I will always do. So help me God. Thank you and good night.
Hey, Halsey, thank you so much for making yourself available.
Happy to be here.
Yes, you and I were connected by our mutual friend Tom Luongo, who suggested
great man.
Yeah, great man, very, very great sweary man as well. I have a lot of fun with Tom. I've learned a lot from him, and I'm hoping to learn a lot from you. And one of the things you said that you're particularly interested in is politics and also the Middle East politics. And I'm curious about your take and how you see how things are playing out in the Middle East, the Gaza peace plan, what's happening with Qatar and Giuliani. Where do you want to begin?
So let's back up for a minute. When we're talking about the Middle East peace plan, okay, the Middle East peace plan as of right now is a stopgap. There's no future for it in terms of how it's going to affect the countries of the Middle East. Why? Because the section of Gaza that's still under control of the Palestinians is probably smaller than the area of London. Okay, and the West Bank itself is such a small area of land itself, even without any of the quote unquote settlers there, that creating a state in those areas is completely unviable. Okay, and when I say unviable, I don't mean unviable in terms of that they'll be fighting forever. I mean, there's not enough water, there's not enough resources. The only port that the internal Palestinian state could have would be Gaza. And that's if they're connected by some kind of land bridge. Otherwise, they're totally landlocked between Jordan and Israel, who both are not going to allow a complete free trade zone between the two. Remember, Israel's about the size of New Jersey. Okay. And that's with the West Bank and Gaza. So when you talk about a Palestinian state in those areas, you're not talking about a state. You're talking about an autonomous zone.
Right.
So if you want to call it for what it is, that it's going to be a Palestinian autonomous zone, then it has to be talked about that way. It has to be talked about where is the responsibility going to lie between the Jordanians, the Israelis, and the Palestinians. You have to talk about how is land going to be allocated, how is there going to be resources allocated, because when you drill into the ground for water, it doesn't matter if it's right under you, if it's affecting everyone around you. If Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinian areas all get water from the same source, it doesn't matter who's putting the pipe in. It's still affecting all three. When you're talking about commerce that involves ports or involves transportation through sovereign land, you're talking about agreements that have to be bilateral. They can't be unilateral.
Okay.
Right? So when you talk about a peace plan, what you're really talking about as of right now is a ceasefire. Okay, there's just an agreement that both sides are going to stop shooting at each other for a little bit. And we've seen that that's probably not the best way forward for all parties involved, regardless of which side you sit on. That just getting them not to kill each other is a good first step, but it's not in any way going to lead to a solving of the problem. Yeah. So the question is, when are, and this is why I said I might not have traditional views on everything. When are the adults going to sit down and start evaluating the problem for what it is, right? Like if you want to look at, let's say, historical Palestine in terms of the British mandate included both Jordan and Israel. Okay, that's a huge area of land. Most of Israel south, the Negev Desert, and below is completely unpopulated. Most of Jordan is completely unpopulated. The only areas that seem to be argued about are the ones where everybody is, where the ones that if you divide them are completely unviable towards each other. But there's enough land where everyone could come together and decide this is the place where the Palestinians are going to be, this is the place where the Israelis are, and this is where the final border would be. And whether everyone agrees to it or not, it could be enforced if necessary. But the idea that there has to be a creation of an entity called Palestine within Israel proper, which, as I said, will be completely unviable and will lead to further bloodshed one way or the other, especially as one will not be ever truly sovereign. I mean, you've heard the discussions. The discussions always revolve around that a Palestinian state will be completely demilitarized, that they won't have control over the borders, that Israel will maintain control over the borders. That's not a state.
No.
That's an autonomous zone. And I haven't heard any Palestinian leadership talking about being okay with an autonomous zone. I haven't heard of any Israeli leaders talking about being okay with an autonomous zone. So that being said, when are the adults going to sit down and decide that if something is going to be done about the Palestinians, that they're going to put forth some solid proposals of a viable alternative to what's on the table right now? And no one's doing that. So my belief is that we're just going to see extended bloodshed as long as this limbo is maintained.
Yes, no, thank you, Halsey. Thank you. And October the 7th, was it 2 years ago? It started 2023.
A little more than that, yeah.
Yeah, in December of that year, 2023, I interviewed a rabbi from an Orthodox group in London. And
They're called Neturei Karta. They're, just so you know, they're not very accepted amongst general Orthodox. In fact, they're condemned by almost all of them. But I do know who you're talking about.
Right. And I'm not sure if that was the name that they gave themselves, but they're Hasidic Jews that live in North London. And I met with, he said, I'll interview you, but not over Zoom, in person. So I met him in London. He was the one wearing the Palestine badge, not me. And then I asked him, I said, well, what's your solution? And he said, one state where people, where Jew, Muslim, and Christian live side by side. I'm paraphrasing here, live side by side as they did before the creation of Israel. And he said, as Jews and Muslims are living side by side in Iran, one state that recognizes all people. And then it seems
it's been tried twice, and both times it failed miserably. That you have the Jews in Iran, which are a minority of minority. I think there's 19,000 Jews in the whole country of 30 million people.
He said to me 30,000. 30,
okay, 30,000 in a country of, I think it's 30 or 40 million people.
Yeah.
So that's not even a minority. That's a statistical anomaly. But the place that it's really been tried is in Lebanon. In Lebanon, the Maronite Christians were firmly in charge, both demographically and politically, of the country. And as they allowed for Muslim integration and one state under both people, and then demographics started to shift in terms of the Muslims, the Maronite Christians became and not only a minority, but a horribly oppressed minority. And now you've had a failed state. You have a state where every side hates each other. Hezbollah has been, for years, been able to exert enormous political control because of outside backing. And you have no legitimate way forward for a true government of Lebanon to represent the people of Lebanon without being completely adherent to one of the three factions, which are the Alawites, the Shiite Muslims, and the Maronite Christians. Right. So you basically have a failed state that is probably going to be resolved at some point through bloodshed. That one group is going to exert dominance over the other two through bloodshed. So, and until then, everyone's going to keep starving and suffering and dealing with civil war and all of that. So it's not a viable solution to just say, hey, can't everyone just get along and live under one state? It's just not.
It would be nice, right? But what
everything would be nice if we could do that.
What you're saying there, right, to me speaks to the deliberate mess created by the British and the French when they
and the Soviets. It was the British, French, and Soviets.
I didn't know about the Soviets. And when they created when they destroyed the Ottoman Empire, and then they divided it up, like for example, Kurdistan. Instead of creating a discrete Kurdistan nation, allowing for that, Kurdistan is split between.
But wait, do you have a problem with that?
Sorry? Do
you have a problem with that? I'm curious. I'm not asking you to start an argument. I'm curious.
No. My read of it is it's what the British have done everywhere. They leave this festering sore that they can then use to shit stir, to have people fighting each other, to make it easier for them to continue plundering the resources and not allow people to unite against their imperial oppressors. So
I agree with that 100%. I'm a big fan of a free Kurdistan, though, just so you know.
Right. Right. It's just that because then they can stoke up MI6 or whoever their proxies can stoke up sectarian conflict in Turkey, in Iraq, in Syria, whenever it serves them, and people never unite. Like take for example Northern Ireland. Like Protestants and Catholics can't live together. Seriously? It happens all over Europe. They live together. It happens on the mainland. They live together, but they leave it as a festering sore. Is my take.
You know why? Because they leave hope. That's how they leave it, as a festering sore. They let all of these groups think that sooner or later they're going to achieve everything they've been fighting for over however many decades. And therefore, they give that hope that if they ever agree to a solution, that they'll be giving up on their dream and they'll be literally subservient themselves to whoever they hate.
Right.
And then they foster that hate by constantly supporting policies that don't allow anyone to ever talk.
Yeah.
Right. And by doing so, like you said, they're able to make sure that the resources that they want are always available because they can always take one side over the other. And that loyalty to that side will get them the resources that they want. And this is something they've been doing even before the British mandate of Palestine. So
Yeah.
that's not new.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's tragic and horrible and horrific, and ordinary people pay the price, right? And then and then we have this. It seems insoluble that it's not going to get resolved because, as Martin Armstrong says, and it makes complete sense to me, that the people's tribal loyalties to religion and culture and language go deep, generations deep.
I always tell this story. You'll find this interesting because never in my life would I give him credit for anything because the guy was such a blithering buffoon. But you know how they say a broken clock is right twice a day? So there was a man in the U.S. Senate who, right after the American invasion of Iraq the first time, back in the 90s, when everyone was saying, what is the solution? What do we do to stop the massacres, to stop the violence, to get Iraq under control, where it's not just being sanctioned and everybody starving and all of this stuff, right? And this guy said, oh, that's obvious. You separate into three countries, Sunni, Shiite, and Kurd, right? And he got laughed out of the room, literally laughed out of the room. You know who that was? Joe Biden.
Oh, this is before he got dementia, right?
Before he got dementia, he was just as much of a retard as he was after he got dementia. He might even have been better after he got dementia. He's always been a clown. But I'm just saying he was the only one who said it, and he got laughed out of the room. And as of now, if you ask anyone, if we could go back in time and do it different, how would we do it? They'd say, oh, you would divide Iraq into three areas: Sunni, Shiite, and Kurd.
Yeah.
Right, because that's where they're all killing each other. That's why ISIS is able to get a stronghold, is because these three tribes are always killing each other. If we just divide them up and let them have their own part of the country, which was a made up country to begin with, there's no historical Iraq. You know what I'm saying? It was always a tribal thing. And if you think about it now, you think, wow, the man was a genius. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not calling Joe Biden a genius. But remember, broken clock is right twice a day.
But in his instance, perhaps just the once. It was right once.
Yeah, it was right once a day. He was on military time, right? But
okay. Well, then the other thing for me is, I would say, is the tragedy of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
That from my read of it, Israel is it can't sustain itself. It's got a tiny population. My understanding is it's suffered economically and industrially because of the war. The people are exhausted from my read of the stuff, right? And it's surrounded by neighbors that it's pissed off, and who are pissed off.
I don't know if I'd agree with that assessment, but go ahead.
Okay, but hostile neighbors.
I wouldn't go that far. Egypt and Jordan aren't hostile. They haven't been hostile in 30, 40 years.
The people are.
Saying the people is meaningless in a place that doesn't have real democracy. Like the people do what the leadership says.
Okay, but my concern is that people will conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Judaism.
Sure.
Right, and then who when if there's blowback or whatever, who will get it in the neck will be the Jews, and the Jews aren't Zionists. Some are, some aren't. Just like not all Muslims are supporters of ISIS and Taliban and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
but when it comes down to it, right? If there's, let's say, I don't know, country blah blah blah, right? Let's not use a real world example. Let's just, because I don't want to be able to say like, oh well, this sectarian group or whatever. Let's just say there's a Muslim country out there, and one of their neighbors decides, we hate Muslims, we're going to go in and just wipe them out, right? Muslims, whether they're Shiite, Sunni, or any of the other branches of Islam, are going to say this is horrible. Right? And they're going to say, you shouldn't just be wiping out people because they're Muslims. The problem is that's what happens with Zionists, is that you can say, oh, well, there's some people that are Zionists, there's some people that are not. But you're still talking about just in the country of Israel, where I would say 99% are Zionists, right? You're talking about 7 million people. Like, there can't be a war against Zionism and not include the general Jewish population anyway, even if they would rather not be included in that classification. So, and what you'll find is that, I don't want to give a number because I don't know, I've never done a study on it. A vast majority of the anti-Zionists are not anti-Zionists. They're just not interested in Jewish politics at all. They don't even really consider themselves Jewish. They consider themselves either progressives or they consider themselves wherever their home nation is. Like Judaism might be a religion to them that they don't follow, but they don't consider themselves to be Jewish for any intent and purposes except for politics. And that's a problem because they don't have to live with the consequences of their actions, whereas the other ones do. Right, because if let's say the anti-Zionist Jews, as I said, which they're a very small minority in the first place, but let's say they got their way and Israel was taken off the map, that it was now like we were talking about, one state for everybody and blah blah blah. It would still be them that feels the blowback because that wouldn't be enough for most people. There's no point where the enemies of Israel are just going to say, "Okay, cool, let's go home." Like we've done what we needed to do. Let's go home. This is Hatfield McCoy. This is blood feud. This isn't something that gets resolved by a simple let's talk and figure.
If you're in the UK, actually anywhere, get a VPN. If you want to be able to access all sorts of perspectives that the government thinks are dangerous for you, get a VPN. nordvpn.com/cryptorich.
This out. There has to be a resolution in which one side is considered the winner and one side is considered the loser. And that could be a thing where it winds up very good for them. Look at Germany, right? After World War II, they were the loser. Half the country was under Soviet occupation. Things did not go well for them right away. Now Germany is the powerhouse of the EU. They're probably arguably the best economy in Europe, right? They have their problems. Don't get me wrong. I'm not speaking as if Germany is the promised land, but I'm saying that when there was a winner and a loser, and one side was able to dictate terms to the other of how things were going to go forward, Germany became much more stable. It became much more proper, and it became much more free because of that time that they took in order to accept that war was not going to accomplish their goal.
Right.
Now, so I'm not saying that you have to be pro-Israel on this side or pro-Palestine or pro anything, but what I'm saying is that there never has been a time in the history of the state of Israel where one side was the winner and one side was the loser. What you had was two people who fought to a ceasefire. Always. Every one of the wars you talk about, every one of the conflicts have always ended in a ceasefire that was imposed on the outside. There was never a time where one side clearly won and one side clearly lost.
And accepted their loss as well, because then
Right.
that would lead to what you're saying, like what happened with Germany. They accepted their loss of the Second World War. Okay, that's fine. We're going to put our energies elsewhere.
Now, you see, there is a sort of example. Now, this wasn't done through war, okay, just so you know. So there is differences. But when you look at Saudi Arabia, when you look at the United Arab Emirates, when you look at Bahrain, when you look at most of the Gulf states, I'm leaving Qatar out on purpose. Qatar is us, just so you know. Qatar is us in Britain, the U.S. in Britain. Qatar is not a real country. It's a shit stain on the Middle East. There's 300,000 countrymen who are controlled by the bases of MI6 and the U.S. government. Let's not pretend that there's.
I spent 4 years working in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and also the slight diversion. Americans generally pronounce it Qatar. English pronounce it. No, Americans say Qatar. British say Qatar. In Arabic, Qatar. But anyway,
yeah, I say Qatar. So
Qatar.
I split the baby. But when you look at the Gulf states, right, they have been fighting an eternal war with the radical side of Islam for a lot of years. That war is basically over. Now, if you look at it, those countries are not only committed to modernization, but they're more anti-Islamic terrorists than the West is. They treat Islamic terrorism right now in the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and places like that with an instant death sentence. The Muslim Brotherhood is outlawed in all of those countries, right? And the majority of the radical youth that existed in those countries that were fostered by those countries, don't get me wrong, it was a very good distraction while they were looting all the oil wealth of those countries, right? They basically have sent them to Europe. So those resources of radical Islam, and now don't get me wrong, it exists, just like it exists anywhere where you have a strong religious bent on any religion. You're going to have radicals. But what I'm saying is they're committed to modernization, and they're committed to using the wealth to build up the countries because they realize that stoking religious fire is not going to keep working. Right. So you've seen that they fought a war where they decided that they were going to go for a Islamic caliphate throughout the world. They realized they lost, and they're allowing the West to kind of dictate terms. And as I said, it's been good for them. Like most people ignore it. In 2016, when Trump came to office, right, he spent $3.5 billion on the Counterterrorism Financing Center. in Saudi Arabia. It was reported, but very, very mildly. Like you didn't see it everywhere, front page. And he considers this a huge, huge, huge accomplishment because the Gulf states chipped in just as much. This was not to fight just who are the terrorists. It was to track their money, right? Where are they being funded from? Where are they shuffling money to? What organizations and what industries are they co-opting in order to fund these radical movements throughout the world? And they've been silently shutting them down one by one. That's why lately that whenever you hear of a country getting really pissed off at someone, they declare them foreign terrorist organizations as opposed to just declaring a war on them, like Trump did with the cartels, Trump did with Nicolas Maduro. It's not because he just wants to take them out. He wants to take out their money. When you take out their money, they have no power, right? Because it's not just their state money that they get, it's their illicit money that they move around. So what he's been able to accomplish by doing this, and what the Gulf states have been able to accomplish by doing this, is really big news that people don't report on. And I think they don't report on it because of biases, because obviously you don't want to say that Saudi Arabia is doing a good job when the Democrats hate them and always have, and the Republicans consider them to be hotbeds of Islamic radicalism. So why would you ever want to talk about how great they're doing? You know what I'm saying? And even possibly radicalize their local populations.
And I
So
definitely don't want to say that Trump is doing a good job. And I wonder if, the funding ultimately leads back to the City of London. And,
which it does.
right. Okay. I suspect it. And MI6 and its proxies and everything doing all of that. So then, and then given the City of London's hold on the BBC as now a general catch-all term for the mainstream media, well, they're not going to promote that idea either.
Of course not.
It's going to undermine how the British imperial elites have been trying to keep a grip on access to collateral and resources in other lands.
Well, think about it. Since the end of World War II, Britain and France have maintained the west of, meaning America, and the east of the Soviet Union at a perpetual state of proxy war with each other all over the world. And every time you think we're getting out of it, we just get thrown right back into it, right? Like all of a sudden, Putin and Ukraine start acting up out of nowhere. And no matter what we do to try to achieve peace between the two of them, there's Britain and France telling, nope, we'll fight to the last drop of their blood. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? That when it seems like the war in Palestine, Israel is finally coming to an end and that Trump has some sort of plan for the future, there's Britain and France. Nope, we're going to recognize this fictional state of Palestine that nobody else does and cause a whole bunch of trouble between the two of them and give them a reason not to go forward. Same thing with all of the other proxy wars that go on through the Middle East. Now, that was what the real accomplishment of the war was after 10/7, right? It wasn't the war between Israel and Gaza. Okay, that was inevitable. It was going to happen. I don't know what the solution is, to tell you the truth. I wish I did. I wish I could tell you, oh, they're just going to do X and it'll be fine. But I don't know what the solution is. I do know that area is basically uninhabitable for the next 10 to 15 years between clearing up the rubble and the unexploded ordnance. And anybody who thinks that they're doing the right thing by telling the Palestinians to live there in tents for the next 10 years is really got to reevaluate what they consider to be peaceful and proper. You know what I'm saying? But that's not the point. The point being is that Iran and this so-called axis of resistance has been utterly destroyed. Okay, and now will the proxies that are being put in that are pro-Western, right? You have a more pro-Western regime in Iraq. You have Jolani, who I hate, but is working with Trump. Now, I'm not giving him credit for anyone. The man is literally a bloodthirsty terrorist. He's cut people's heads off. Like, he's a disgusting animal. But he's still obviously a U.S. proxy. Right, the U.S. is propping him up.
I think what's happened with Giuliani is he was a Turkish and or a British proxy working on their behalf. And then what's happened is that Trump has captured him. No, you work. Trump, that gangster said, no, you work for me now, not the City of London, not for Erdogan.
Yep.
I think that's right. Now, Halsey, there's something I just want to say, just segue into, if I may, right? Which is
sure
the role of the British. Just segue into, if I may, right? Which is
sure
the role of the British. Ever since, they didn't leave their colonies, they gave them nominal independence, but they used their embedded structures to keep control of them through their proxies at a distance. And one of the things that I'm involved in, and I want to use your channel and my channel to remind people of, right, especially people in Britain, that it is a criminal offense to pay any fine, fee, tax, or levy to central or local government in the UK. And we can actually use this as a legal, lawful means of protesting this government's foreign policy, but also its domestic policy. So I invite people to go to bit.ly/make-war-history, because by giving money to central government, where some of that money is being used to facilitate or fund genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, or terrorism, as specified by those statutes, as evidenced by British foreign policy in Yemen, Israel, Ukraine, and other places where they're funding proxies, you are breaking the law. Don't break the law by paying tax. bit.ly/make-war-history.
You're definitely not wrong about that, actually.
No.
You're also you have to understand that Britain, and I'm sure you understand this better than most, is in a major financial crisis. And they're not able to bail themselves out the same way a power like the US or Russia or China is, right? They need to sell either hard assets, or they need to in some way implement austerity, which if they did, there would be riots, right? So, and they have this growing problem of illegal immigrants, or I guess they're called asylum seekers now, that are costing more money than the actual population of Britain is costing through the NHS and retirement and all of that. And they don't have a way to raise the money.
Well,
I mean,
Jose, we do. Britain does. It has all these hydrocarbons. It has oil and gas and coal. So we could dig that out, and if we could be self-sufficient in food, but it would take a change in policy and abandoning the net zero scam, that complete swindle. And of course, it would mean Britain would have to exit Agenda 2030 and playing that playbook, which they're not going to do currently. So we actually could. And then with regards to the illegal immigrants, it's not just the illegal immigrants, it's the legal immigrants in the absence of jobs and economic growth.
So I conflate the two, because here we have a big difference. But I know what you're talking about. I agree with you 100%. It's terminology that we just disagree on. But I totally hear you. And the problem is, and this is a big problem for Europe in general, is the EU. The EU has created these systems of Agenda 2030 and net zero and all of this stuff. And it was originally thought that the whole world would get behind these things. Therefore, the economic pain would be felt by everybody, and everybody would be able to unite behind it. And most countries just aren't buying it anymore because they know it's bullshit. So when you know it's bullshit, you don't cut off your own hand just because you think that it'll mean that your finger will itch less.
Yeah.
Also,
it's also, forgive me for interrupting you, but it's also, it's European imperialism for the 21st century. So in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, the Europeans went around the world telling people in Africa and South America and Asia, hey, listen, we know what's good for you. We're going to give you Christianity as a cover for plundering your resources and genociding your people. And now what we have, well, we don't have that anymore. What we have is climate change, the continent that is dependent, that is not self-sufficient in hydrocarbons. We're going to export climate change. It's for your own good, and it's a cover for plundering your resources and no cheap energy for you. And the rest of the world,
the rest of the world have had it.
Yeah.
That's the point, is the rest of the world have really had it. It's one thing to ask people to sacrifice for, let's say, peace, or for economic prosperity, or for something like that. But the idea that people are going to keep believing that by 2030, we're all going to be dead of climate change unless we completely destroy our economic systems, those days are over. Nobody's buying it anymore. And the people that pretended to buy it in the first place, like China and Russia, they're just saying, look, we were never really into it in the first place, but if you want us to keep making you solar panels, we will, if you'll keep buying them, but
we'll keep building coal power stations.
Right.
And using gas and oil.
But Britain especially is, and trust me, if I understood this, I would probably be a billionaire myself. They're allowing their most prized industries to leave. Yeah. Like the commodities market has always been in the City of London, right? Now it's basically in the UAE, because the City of London has manipulated it so much that there's no trust left. There's no people that want to invest in commodities futures on the idea that as soon as Britain decides that they want to change the game, they'll just manipulate the market. So the markets are just being transferred all over the world, and Britain's watching it go bye-bye. The Bank of London, which has been owned to manage the crown assets since, the 1600s, is now owned by Saudi Arabia. You mean
the Bank of
they bought it.
By Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, they bought it a long time ago. The majority share.
Right. I didn't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and the real estate of London is being plundered by foreign investors to the point where Britain themselves don't own it.
No.
Like you can't maintain a city and a standard of living that's normal by Western standards if your entire property is owned by foreigners and they don't have that same vested interest than you do. In fact, there's probably a lot of countries that have quite a resentment against Britain for all that they've done over the years, and they're more
Oh,
than happy to call in their cards.
oh
As
yeah.
I said, there's a reason why Britain and France have taken in unlimited amounts of asylum seekers, which are obviously not asylum seekers. They're all military aged men. They're not even families, right? Like a child sees this as being a stupid call. And yet they're instead of willing to stop it, they're just willing to criminalize those that criticize it.
Yeah, but which is it's the Cloward Piven strategy. It's throughout the European Union, the UK. I've covered quite a bit what's happened to Ireland. This beautiful, homogenous Roman Catholic nation, not an imperialist nation. Didn't go around conquering other countries. Was conquered itself for 800 years by the English. Suffered loads as a consequence of that. And now something like 20% of the population are mostly male migrant Muslims in the absence of economic growth. It's one thing if they're coming for jobs, because then they got to be responsible. They got to integrate.
Mhm.
And then they contribute to society. No, the government is just spending money on them versus on the local people. And so then you have resentment building and you have the local ants fighting these new arrival ants.
Mhm.
And then the
Well,
elite carry on plundering.
because you can look at, and it's funny because you take something that's true, right? And you twist it to a point where people start thinking that what used to be true is still true, and then they defend it with their lives. And the best example of that is diversity is our strength.
Hmm.
Okay? Because in America, in the early 1900s, that was 100% true. You know why? There were no social welfare systems. So only the best came to America because if you didn't survive there, you starved or you went home. There was nothing to boost you up. There was no welfare. There was no social systems. There was church charity, but that was all local. You can't just come there and be a bum for your whole life. Like the best came to America, and diversity was our strength. We had people from all different nations coming because they were all chasing this capitalist dream of hard work will give you a leg up if the government gets out of your way. We have now taken that in that the idea of diversity as our strength is that the diversity is of ethnicity, but isn't of talent, right?
Well,
So now we just
I think the other thing, and this is the point that Martin Armstrong makes, is that to make it in the US, these new arrivals everybody had to learn English. Everybody
yep.
had to learn English. That's not the case here. And then what's happening is that there are particular strategies that this government are employing in order, and strategies to stoke resentment between communities. There was
Hmm.
the government giving money for the now people gonna know watching this right on Hosey's channel or my channel. You'll know I'm Muslim. I wasn't born here. I came here as an immigrant. My father and my father had a job. He had an interview. He came here, took the job. My mom got a job here, and with my brother and sister, and we grew up here. So, and I'm Muslim. However, I don't want this nation being destroyed, and all people should be treated fairly. So the government's giving money for mosques, but doing nothing about the churches that are being destroyed.
Hmm.
So that's going to create resentment.
I mean, I'll just give you an example. My father's family have been here since the 1600s. They built America. But
Right.
my mother's family, like my grandfather on her side, he came during the war, right? And he escaped Germany. He made it. He was thrown in prison in Britain because he spoke German when he got there, and then he eventually made his way here. He had to be sponsored, and he had to have a job when he got here. So they gave him a job as an electrician, something he'd never done before. He of course got fired after 2 weeks, and they gave him a choice. They said no. They gave him three choices: get a new job, go back to Germany, or join the military. There was no, we'll take care of you. There was no, obviously, you're being oppressed, so we're not going to send you anywhere. And he joined the military. And he went to Japan and fought for 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Like that was America. America was, we're not responsible for your happiness. That if you're coming here, you're here to benefit the country. The country is not here to benefit you,
Mm.
right? And that attitude led to people working really, really hard, working together, learning English, learning culture, and learning how to survive in a country that wasn't going to get your back if you just decided that, hey, I'm a member of the human race and deserve everything for free. We've now changed that to where we give the social welfare to the people who just got here, which encourages the exact opposite. If they learn English, if they integrate, if they get a job, those benefits will be cut off, and they'll be responsible for living on a very meager living compared to what they were getting under the social welfare system. So we're encouraging the opposite. We're encouraging the people that want better social benefits but don't want to integrate into the country to come. And we're dealing with that on a daily basis. Not as bad as we are as you guys are in Europe. Because with the bigger difference is that here we're dealing with it from Mexico and Central America, which aren't as bad as dealing with it from the Middle East and Africa. And that's just fact. It's not a racist thing, it's just fact.
No, well,
right.
the people coming in from Mexico and Central America into the United States are a different shade of Christianity.
They're also economic migrants. They're not coming for any reason other than they want better working conditions.
They want to work. So, yeah, the ones coming over into Europe are Muslims from the Sahel, mostly Muslims from the Sahel, Africa, Middle East, Asia. And not only are they, it's not just they're Muslims, but they're from culturally different. So they're not going to be united. And they have different languages. Whereas the people coming over from the Americas, Central America and South America, pretty much they all speak Spanish and some will speak Portuguese, and they can understand each other. So, yeah, which is oh dear, it's not good. The outlook in Europe.
Well, it's not good, but there's a silver lining to this.
Okay.
In that the people themselves are starting to see that a lot of the things they've been told over the last 20 years just aren't true. And COVID was the catalyst for this. I know we don't want to get into it, but I'm just saying that COVID was the catalyst for people to at least start questioning what was going on. Yeah. And once you make a single question, then it leads to a second question, it leads to a third. Now, listen, there are plenty of people that have completely jumped headfirst into the concrete wall of conspiracy theory, where everything that they hear, no matter who they hear it from, has to be true as long as it doesn't get back to the government somehow. Okay, those people are generally regarded as a joke, so they're not as much of a concern. But the vast majority of people.
If you're in the UK, actually anywhere, get a VPN. If you want to be able to access all sorts of perspectives that the government thinks are dangerous for you, get a VPN. nordvpn.com/cryptorich.
Are at least willing to say there's something wrong here. Something is going on where my dollar is worth less or my pound is worth less. My job is not paying me more. And the prosperity I was promised if I worked hard for my future is not materializing in a way that it should be. And because they're willing to ask those questions, they're not letting people go with just stupid platitudes and slogans and letting them continue to plunder everything without in some way being looked at to be held accountable. Now, in Britain, I feel bad because I don't know why you keep electing the Conservative Party and the Conservative Party turns out worse than the Liberal parties, than the Labour parties, and then the Labour parties just come to mop it up.
No, the Labour Party, Keir Starmer is the worst ever, absolute worst. I mean,
yeah, but it's the Conservatives that led to him.
Sure.
Like without the Conservative bumbling of the last 20 years, the Keir Starmer would have never had a chance.
Yes, and my take on it is ever since Tony Blair, including Tony Blair, we've actually had those that have done puppets of the WEF who've been doing the bidding of the WEF. And what I did say when Sunak became, with the possible exception of Liz Truss, who the Bank of England killed off, and what I said when Sunak, on my videos, when Sunak became Prime Minister, he's going to do such a god-awful job. He's going to give Starmer an unassailable majority, and Starmer's going to destroy this country, which is exactly what's happened. I mean, one example of that, during the general election campaign, Sunak comes out with this policy platform, vote for me, and we'll bring in conscription. That's a vote winner? No, that's designed to drive votes into Labour. More people will vote Labour, right? And now we have this hopeless condition where the genuine radicals, those that actually are sovereigntist and want a better Britain, like David Curtin from the Heritage Party, like George Galloway from the Workers' Party, like Jeremy Corbyn, they are sidelined.
Well, you'll never get me to admit either of them are good people, but okay.
Whatever, but they're sovereigntists. And I think I'd invite you to look into David Curtin for sure, right? Because he's more of a traditional conservative in the vein of Thatcher, small business, decentralization, small government, all of that, right? But they are sidelined. And I think your party which is Jeremy Corbyn's new party, is being destroyed by an operation by MI5, I suspect, because they don't want people uniting under him. Instead, what we're being offered are the fake alternatives. Nigel Farage and this other guy, Zach Polanski, who's come out of nowhere as the leader of the Green Party, which is going up through the polls like crazy in order to capture any left-wing based opposition, to capture that energy. And Nigel Farage on the right will capture the energy into dead ends.
Mm-hmm.
We got nothing, and they're given airspace on the mainstream media, Farage and Polanski,
Mm-hmm.
and I see them as little more than, I suppose, the equivalent of Mamdani
Sure.
in New York, right? The fake blow-ins that capture genuine revolutionary spirit and lead it into a dead end.
You see, that's our problem that we're going to have with Trump. Is that the thing about Trump is that when they say he's not a traditional politician, we don't look at it from terms of what's true. We look at it from in terms of what we wish was true. But what's true about Trump is that he's not a traditional Republican. He's not a traditional Democrat, but he doesn't kowtow to the small, insignificant wings of the base that mean nothing to him or mean nothing to the country. You're seeing it right now with this whole Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, right? When she was with him, he was all about supporting her. But when she came out and decided that it was better to go against him because, after all, there were probably more clicks on social media for her for it, and when she wanted more because she wanted to run for Senate and Trump told her to not waste her time, she went after Trump. All it took was one really nasty tweet from Trump, and now she's on the defensive. She's running for cover. She's running to the left wing media. She's running to the left wing politicians to try to like boost her up, and it's not working. Trump understands that he has an agenda, and he wants that agenda to get implemented. And whether you agree with it or not, that's his agenda. And if that means supporting someone that traditionally Republicans would hate, he's fine with it. If it means supporting someone that traditionally Republicans would love, he's fine with it. He doesn't care as long as his agenda is getting pushed in. And we only have 3 years left. In 3 years, Trump is gone. And if he loses the midterms, he won't get much accomplished other than foreign policy anyway for the last two. So right now, there's that mad dash of how much legislation can we get implemented that's going to cement the changes we need for the future, because whatever politician follows Trump, they're not going to have that boldness of Trump that he's willing to talk out against people that are in his own sphere of influence. Right? Like JD Vance will kowtow to the more radical parts of the party because he thinks he needs everyone to get elected. Right? Trump never was like that. Trump when he was just as good friends with Lindsey Graham as he was with someone more to the right. And he was just as against Thomas Massie and the rest when he realized that they were not going to help him get his agenda passed. And now he's been doing that. He's been implementing his agenda. And usually, almost every time they warn that Trump's going to cause this or Trump's going to cause that, the exact opposite happens. And it turns out he knew what he was doing the whole time. Right. And I think that there's a genuine fear that, we have the best running us right now, and we have to support him because we don't have that much time left before a more traditional politician comes in.
Okay, but MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Thomas Massie, their objection is about releasing the Epstein list because he said he was going to do that and he hasn't done that.
He didn't.
What's your
Do you know how many times he mentioned it on the campaign trail?
But he's in interviews.
One time on the campaign trail, they asked him if he was going to release the Epstein files in an interview, and he said, I'm fine with doing that, but I've never seen what's in them. And I'm not going to release something that just slanders a bunch of innocent people because there's no proof behind it. So when we get back into office, I'm going to take a look at it. And yes, if there's something there to release, I'll release it. If there's not, I won't. That's what he said.
Okay, but then Pam Bondi subsequently has said, look, we're going to release it. We're going to release it. And by the way, I'm just curious. I want to get all sorts of perspectives. I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not buying the story that Trump's in there and that's why he's not releasing it, because I'm pretty sure the Democrats would have released that stuff if they had it, right? And they wouldn't have to do all that nonsense, pure, weak, go nowhere lawfare that they did, right? That would have got rid of him. So how come he hasn't released it? And then what's the big deal about releasing it? And why are Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene so hell-bent on it being released?
Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene are so hell-bent on it because Trump is supporting Massie's opponent in his primary next year. And Massie has always hated Trump, and Trump's always hated Massie. And you ask my personal opinion, I think that MTG believes that Massie's going to run for president and that she can get on as his vice president. I don't think that they'll win. I think that that's a joke, but I think they both believe they can. And so they're taking this stance on the Epstein list because they know that on the cuckoo wing of the party that's online and not in real life, that this gets some kind of traction. But again, if the Epstein stuff contained damning information about Trump and other Republicans, the Democrats would have released it a long time ago. If it released something damning about the Democrats, I bet you the Republicans would have been fighting to release it, and so would Trump. I have a feeling the Epstein files say exactly what we all already know, that Bill Clinton and certain other people, Bill Gates and all of them were frequent visitors. They were all there to fuck young women. We all know this. That's what people in power seem to do, right? And we all know that it's going to be embarrassing for a bunch of people, but it's not going to change anything. Like knowing the details that are in it don't matter. So they get more out of the argument about whether it should be released than they do about actually releasing it. And you know that if this week they vote to release it and the government comes out and says, okay, fine, here's all the files that we have that have the name Jeffrey Epstein in it, it's going to be a giant nothing burger. And people are going to be more pissed than if it was the most damning thing on earth, because they're going to say it's a cover up. They're going to say they released everything. It doesn't say anything. Therefore, they're hiding what it really should be saying. And you can't disprove a negative. You can't say, oh, no, there's not more. Look at the box. It's empty. Because they're going to say, well, you hid the box. You hid what was in the box. And then how do you prove that that's not true? Right? So it's
have you
that's
got
why
Epstein files under your hat?
Yeah, exactly. Right here. Like it's Epstein, we know who's been to Epstein Island. We've known for years. This is not anything new.
Okay, then is it the ties to Israel and Mossad and MI6 and the CIA?
Funny enough, I don't think, no, that's what I think is the problem. I think the reason that there's a lot of politicians that don't want to release it are because of its trail back to Britain. And that makes our whole cause of being with NATO, being such close allies, I think creates a real problem. And I don't think they did it as blackmail, by the way. In case you haven't noticed, Bill Clinton got blown in the Oval Office by an intern and nobody cared, and they still reelected him. Okay, like if having sex with women, like young women,
she wasn't a minor.
Right. But I'm saying I don't think that most of the Epstein women were either. I think there were probably some that were like that maybe lied about their ages at the time and were like 17, 16 or whatever. But where Epstein Island was in a British protectorate. And I have friends that have been to that area and said that just going there on vacation is difficult. Like that when you go there, you get the fifth degree and all of that. But somehow Epstein was able to acquire this island in this British protectorate, which I think all it says to me is that who's the Prince Andrew, I think it is, that's been like disowned by the entire royalty. I think it was just basically him. Like they had this thing, like you'll be able to influence, you'll be able to use your money to do whatever you want. You can fly politicians there, but I want a safe place where I can go party with lots of girls and nobody's going to ever find out about it. And I think that what they're going to find, as I said, it's a nothing burger. We all know this. This isn't new information.
And I think, Halsey, the other aspect that's also important that gets ignored is how Epstein was money laundering massive amounts. And
we think we don't know. We don't know where his money was coming from or how he made it. Now we all would like to think that means he was money laundering for intelligence services, right? But we don't know that. We don't know where his money came from. We know he made a lot in stocks and in foreign exchange and all of that. But do we know where all of Bill Gates's money comes from? No, we know the money comes from Microsoft, but we don't know the entangled web that he has of all the financial dealings he has all over the place. Same thing with Soros. Same thing with all of them, to tell you the truth. Rich people have millions of different financial tentacles. So was he money laundering? Who knows? Was he hiding money for different organizations? Who knows? Was he invested heavily and just trying to buy influence because he saw it worked with Prince Andrew, so why not try it with everyone else? Maybe. Was he working for intelligence services? He could be. None of us know these things, and I'm not sure they do either. I'm not sure there's a file where they can tell you this is who Jeffrey Epstein was and this is what he did. And as I said, anything short of the revelation that Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, and Benjamin Netanyahu were puppet masters over Epstein is just going to lead to more outrage than will be if they just say we're not releasing this stupid shit. Right? And I have a feeling that that's what the argument is about, is that they know that whatever in the files is not going to do anything. And they realize the outrage from there not being enough information is going to be worse than if they said a whole bunch of stuff that was really damning.